The review has been long overdue. It's in actual fact 37 years overdue.
The Lesotho Highlands Water Treaty first came into effect in 1986, and while the treaty allows for a periodic review, hardly any material review has ever been conducted yet. But now, both countries have agreed to find a common ground in order to align this treaty with the current socio-economic conditions suitable to both South Africa and Lesotho.
Currently, the water is collected in the highlands, is transferred through the tunnels, and it exits Lesotho very quickly, with very little of that water being drawn into the specific area where the agriculture can be improved by irrigation. Not only crops, but as well as the fishery and all the other aspects.
Lesotho says one of the key negotiating areas is the building of the two weirs along the north of Mohokare or Caledon River for shared irrigation purposes.
The second area is the fair compensation for the project, that those are affected by project issues such as delays in getting compensations have been reported, and just the overall governance of the project. It's a very convoluted governance at the moment. There's a role for government of Lesotho, there's a role for government of South Africa, but in between there is the commission.
Minister Moteane alludes to the significant delays in the delivery of Phase 2 that seem to be embedded on governance issues and how the treaty is structured. I'm Rapelang Khatebe for SABC News, Masero, Lesotho.
To talk more about this, we're joined by SABC News correspondent Rapelang Khatebe. Rapelang, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Phase 2 of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project is meant to take effect or be in effect, but it's being held up by negotiations between South Africa and Lesotho, specifically around local beneficiation for Basotho nationals to have increased benefit from the treaty and the ongoing project. Take us into the heart of what Basotho politicians and particularly officials of the state are finding to be contentious around the treaty as it currently stands.
Hi, good evening to everyone. Yes, I think maybe we should say it is not absolutely at a point where we say it is not progressing because it is under negotiations, and both countries have agreed cordially that they will be engaging on those kinds of negotiations, because the treaty says every, I think, 11 years, there needs to be a review, a relook into the treaty that is provided. There's new presentations, new ideas, just to keep it across. You'll remember Mrs. Pemi Matjato is currently on a working visit to Lesotho, and she has also mentioned issues that are of concern to keep the treaty in very relevant to both countries, to address the country's needs. If you look back, the treaty was signed by both the apartheid government, if I must say, and on the Lesotho side, it was signed by the military junta. So you will say both entities were not at the democratic level dispensation, if one must say that. So there would still be issues that perhaps could not have been efficiently been dealt with and are beginning to resurface. That Moteane says
what are some of those issues?
7 years overdue.
What are some of those issues that they feel remain unresolved?
One of them says the treaty said Lesotho would benefit entirely of the electricity. Where there is water delivery, there would be an opportunity for Lesotho to make the hydroelectricity out of the plant. But it was the cost issue that was perhaps not absolutely clear as to who will be funding those. The other party from Lesotho understands maybe they would be met halfway, I'm not sure, but it was really not clear, I think, crystal clear as to who would fund that electricity part, or was it for Lesotho to find its own funding partners. These are some of the issues that needs. On the other issue, Mrs. Majudina was also raising that the tariffs also that Lesotho charges on collecting water, some of them are a bit steep considering that they are totally funding the Lesotho Highlands Water Project. And I think some of these escalations that happen, like you're saying, it's beginning to delay, and the delays means there will be problems with escalation of funds. So these are things that says, as this project gains momentum and changes in dimension, who caters for those shortfalls?
As the review process is underway, what are the expectations of some Basotho politicians? Is it that the treaty must be renegotiated from scratch altogether by the two standing governments, or that specific elements of it must be reconsidered?
I think, talking to some of the politicians, they say, I don't think they would want to see the entire program renegotiated from scratch. Anyway, the project by its in nature, it's left with about 11, 12 years, I think, because the project is a 50-year contract project, and we are celebrating 40 years next year. That means it's for 39th year this time. But some of the issues that have really raised concern was the calculations of the tariffs. The other one was the handling of the relocation, resettlement of some of the people who were affected. Lesotho is a very small country, and there are people who had to be uprooted, moved to places that they would struggle even to get familiar with or to even acclimatize to. So they say some of those things, how the settlements, how would be handled, would be done. Those were some of the concerns. Mostly the politicians were saying they believe they could have been dealt differently. There are still overhanging issues. Even as we come into the new project, the people who will be affected by the relocation, that these are the issues as to what is the modicum, what is the best way to settle their relocation, because you did an agreement with an elderly person almost 30 years ago, and you are now facing with an inheritance, somebody who has inherited that place at current, and somebody will just wake up and say, the agreement and the deals that you did with my parents are not really helping me or are not satisfactorily enough. So these are the things as to say, do you start the process from scratch? Do you discount what has been negotiated before? How do you handle this dynamic changes? Because what happens over 50 years can get a little complicated as the generations interact.
This project is really important to Lesotho's economy. It's about 25% of its total exports. On the upper level, some economists estimate that it's about 5% of Lesotho's GDP altogether. If the negotiation, or at least if phase 2 gets delayed even further, are some politicians worried about what the economic ripple effect of this could be if the review at least upholds the conclusion of phase 2?
You're absolutely right. I think one of the meetings that we attended today, I got privy to attend to at least get to understand some of the dynamics sitting with both ministers of Lesotho and South Africa. They have agreed that I think there was too much of a lag before decisions were made. You'll understand that there will be a consortium from the Lesotho side and from the South African side, and often the decision-making process takes a little long because of these two entities and two governments coming together. So I think some of the decisions that have come is that there will be a quarterly visit. Ms. Majudina committed to saying she will have quarterly, even more frequent, just to to have the beat, to understand, to be on the ground, to really understand whether there could be means to at least expedite the process of the decision making without necessarily simply saying, let's follow the red tape, let's follow this process. So I think that intervention on its own simply says there is an understanding between the two countries. At least there is no standoff. So other negotiations can take place, but I think the mood says there is no standoff as per se. They are willing to negotiate. They are willing to meet each other halfway and compromise where needs be.
Yeah, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Rapelang. Really do appreciate your insights on this. Rapelang, SABC News correspondent.